Mm-hmm. 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 What's up, everybody? Sully here, back at Godsmack headquarters somewhere in New England with Hometown Sessions, yet another episode. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for tuning in on the last episode. I hope you enjoyed it because that dude, Bobby Kelly, is probably my favorite stand up comedian of all time. And the Thursday before that, we had Jim Wahlberg on, who I got a ton of emails about that episode and how much it helped people and get some clarity and things like that. And so this week, I wanted to invite yet another one of my really good friends that I've known for a very long time for a couple of different reasons. For one, I just really admire this guy so much as a songwriter, as a musician, as an artist. And two, because he's also kind of gone down his own road of addiction and recovery and just had a hell of a life himself. So before I bring him on, because we have a lot to talk about, so I want to get right to it, I want to show you about 45 seconds of what this dude does. So check it out. So, needless to say, my brother from another mother, please meet Mr. Clint Lowery. What's up, man?
What's happening, brother? Man, that was a great intro. I think I almost like shed a tear a little bit.
Yeah, we try to like do it right here, and just bring people in with a little bit of rock and roll attached to it.
Yeah, I like it, man. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. It's funny that, the more people I talk to, I love that the fans get to see us in this context because all they usually see is either, magazine photos with these cool pop, rock poses. If we can even get any cool rock poses out of it, they usually post the shit that looks the dumbest half the time. Or they see us on stage in videos and doing what we do, So like, it's nice, I think, for the fans to be able to get a real glimpse at who we are and how we communicate and, the friendships that we've had as well over time. And me and you go way back, man. I mean, I think 87 is maybe when we met because I moved to Fayetteville from Boston for about 3 or 4 years when I was getting in a lot of trouble up here. And my mom moved us down there in December of 85. So 86 was that figuring it out year for me, trying to find musicians, new friends, people to hang with. I was totally alone. So I think somewhere on the tail end of that, maybe 86, no, it was more like 87, that I started to meet you guys because I was finding the club scene around there and some of the bands that were happening. And and you were playing for, who was it Still Rain when I met you? It was someone before that, right? Do you remember?
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, if I say the name, you're gonna bust my balls immediately.
Wait, what is it? I forgot.
It was named Quiet Thunder.
Oh, I don't even remember that much.
You know what? It was actually this is even worse. Satin Dagger was the name.
Shut up! Really? I don't remember that one either.
It was the first version of Still Rain, what would become Still Rain, which
Right.
you probably remember that cover
Right.
band.
And
Yeah, man.
I remember Bevan Carter was your drummer, right, Bevan?
Yeah, yeah.
And do you still talk to him? Because he was really good, actually.
He's good, man. He's good. He's had a few cool gigs over the years. He played with Jerry Cantrell and Danzig for a while, and but I remember it specifically before we moved past this. When you first moved down to that area, it was like all this talk, like this new guy, Sully, this drummer, man. He's incredible, man. He's like there was all this hype that was around your name way
Really?
back then. And I remember meeting you, man. And you being this like the humor immediately was one of those things. And we were standing outside those little clubs, and I remember like seeing you come in and
Docs.
yeah, docs, exactly, right. That's it, man.
That was really the hang because later there was times where we went to the Flaming Mug because usually Flaming Mug had like more nationals in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And for the people that don't know where we're talking about, I actually met Clint in Fayetteville, North Carolina. That's where my mom moved us to because she had an opportunity to work for Fort Bragg. She's a nurse. It had always been a nurse.
Yeah, yeah.
And when she finally decided to try to pull me out of Lawrence because I was in so much trouble, she had an opportunity to go there, and that's what drove us to North Carolina. She never did get that job at Fort Bragg, but she ended up doing some stuff at the hospitals around there, Fayetteville Hospital, whatever it was. And so I was just kind of left on my own to find musicians. And the first thing I would do is I went to the Cross Creek Mall in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
And I would go to the arcade because at the time I was only 18. And so that's where kids hung out, is the arcade. And that's when I found like people like John Robbins and David Keck and those guys.
Yeah.
And little by little, they were introducing me to the musicians they knew, which led me to you and people like that. So
God, I haven't heard those two names, and it's so long. Man, I actually heard that David Keck passed away, man.
he did
I don't know if that's
heroin
true.
overdose.
Ah,
Of all
sad.
things, yep. He got hooked on the needle and he passed away from a heroin overdose, from what John tells me. But there was a lot of cool times there, and it's funny that I just revisited some of it recently with John Robbins because I went down to see my mom, and I had met up with an old musician of mine that I was in a band with, Todd Jackson, who played for Lex Luthor, that I ended up playing for later.
Yeah.
And I've been doing some car shopping with him because he's a race guy and he knows a lot of people with cool muscle cars and whatever. And so, but through that and meeting up with John and going to see Todd, we went and kind of did a little walk down memory lane through Fayetteville and went to the old mug. We went to Doc's. We took some photos, and we were just talking about all those days. And I even remember a girl that was hanging out with you guys. I think maybe your brother might have dated her. I can't quite remember the connection, but Jennifer Arguello, does that name sound familiar?
Yeah, yeah, man. I remember her very well. I mean, her and I dated for a brief second, and she was friends in that circle, man. Really nice girl. And
Super nice.
yeah, she was really cool. She had a couple of friends that I still talk to today, and they had actually let me know about her. I had no idea
Yeah.
that she
So
passed,
she just passed away too, and to cancer, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I didn't know that at the time when we were filming, and we just happened to be talking about her, and John brought her up, and I'm like, oh my God, I love that girl. She was such a
Yeah.
nice person. And then I think within a week after that, John called me, goes, oh my God, like Jennifer just passed. I'm like, wow. So that was
She was
pretty.
at a record bar. Remember the record bar? That's where I
Yes.
put my first like Iron Maiden T-shirts and everything. Where you would go, and it was this experience in a record store.
Record store, yeah.
There, and she was like had the coolest job. And she sat behind the counter and introduced us all the new records and everything. Yeah, man, she was like the gatekeeper
Yeah.
of that record store experience for me, man.
Totally,
You know?
yeah. And it was just funny remembering all those bands from that era, like Rough Justice, because my
Yeah.
friend Bill came down, who, again, another person that passed away, drank himself to death. It's like, God,
Yeah.
the more people we mention, it's just amazing how we've survived some of the stuff that we went through, you know?
No question, man.
But I think it was Steve something and Mike Flynn, I think, from Rough Justice.
Yeah,
Remember those two
Steve
dudes?
Flint and Mike Jakes.
Mike
And
Jakes, that's what it was.
Yeah, Mike Jakes' younger brother Joey is one of my best friends, and we still talk to this day, man. Mike Jakes, yeah. Mike Rough Justice was like the top tier, man. They were
Yeah.
like the coolest name,
Yeah.
pretty good musicians too,
Yep,
man.
they were doing Priest, like all the good stuff.
Yeah,
I like killer
absolutely.
music. I was doing weird shit with my hair and makeup, I think.
We all were, man. No one gets out of that era without,
I promised the fans at one point because I've been, breaking balls with a few of my friends that have come on, like Brent from Shinedown and Jacoby. We've been having some fun and showing the best of their hairdos and weird shit phases they went through. And I promised people that I promise I will get to my shit at some point. And they're not gonna believe what
oh man, I can't wait. I wish I
I
had
didn't
some.
do you
I
wrong
would
on this
do it right now.
episode. I spared you that shit, so don't worry, that's not coming.
Oh man.
But so before we get even deeper into some things that I wanted to talk to you about, tell everybody first of all where you were born and kind of like what your upbringing was like, because that's a part of you that I never knew because I never thought to ask you back in the day. We were just partying and playing in bands, but
Right,
where
right.
where did you grow up and like what was that kind of surrounding like?
So, my father, he was a Lumbee Indian, Native American that resided in like Robeson County, Red Springs, which is one of the poorest counties in the country, actually. But I grew up there about an hour away from Fayetteville, North Carolina, where you and I met. I grew up there in a trailer in the middle of the country. It was actually what I always refer to as one of the best times of my life. It was like where me and my brothers running around these fields. I had a lot of cousins, played a lot of sports, and then my mom and dad get divorced, and I move up to Fayetteville, and that's where I kind of started finding musicians. And my mom and dad were musicians; they were in a band. That's how they met. And my mom kind of gave up her career to take care of my older brother, so on and so forth. And my dad always toured. He played. He was a hustler. He would go to clubs, walk up. He didn't know how to read, so he would just walk in, charm people with the acoustic, and just play one man shows. And he had all kinds of runs at almost getting a deal, almost getting a record contracts. And he was just one of those guys, a survivor, man.
Yeah.
Uh, so we grew up there in Fayetteville and fell into the band culture, and that was just kind of what I always hung out with the older kids. I always hung out with like-minded musicians. I just avoided sports because dad that's not the culture I grew up around. It was just music.
Right.
So me and my brothers just kind of gravitated to that, and then it just kind of went from there. It was obsession from early on.
What did your dad play as an instrument?
He was a guitar player, singer,
Oh,
songwriter.
cool. So just like you.
Yeah, Willie
Apple doesn't
Lowry.
fall far from the tree.
Yeah, but he had something special, man. It really bums me out that he never had that opportunity. I think that was one of those things we all kind of had a mission to do what he wasn't able to do, and to
Yeah.
get a little further than he was, because we were in a way kind of competitive with him because there was a resentment because he was gone a lot. But because of music, because of him, there wasn't FaceTime, there wasn't any presence. He would go for these long 2 week or 2 month, 3 month tours, and I never see him. So now that I've done the music thing, toured, and I know the sacrifice, I have a lot more empathy with what he did. I
Yeah.
understand a lot more about what he was trying to do. He was just trying to land that big deal, and he would have done the right thing had that happened. But it was always a hustle for him.
Yeah, yeah. And did him and your mom stay together or did they divorce or
They divorced when I was 8, and that
oh
was why
yeah.
we moved away to Fayetteville. And she always played music around the house and stuff. And it was rough, man. My childhood was pretty rough. A lot of volatile. Just the environment itself was pretty toxic. A lot of alcoholism, a lot of
In the family
partying.
or within the streets or the kids you're hanging with and all that?
The kids I was hanging around with, but in the household itself, my mom had a couple boyfriends, and that weren't the most ideal role models for us. She was a great mother. She was just trying to find her way after that divorce, but she had her flaws, and she passed away recently, and it's been a that's just on the forefront of my life. That she was a flawed human, but she was a beautiful human, and she was a strong ass woman, man. She dealt with a lot of stuff, and she was a protector at the end of it, but that being said, it was still my early childhood. My memories were survival. Uh, I would come home from school, and there would be these parties that would be starting with all these construction workers, and just a lot of things that kids really
Wow.
should be seeing, and I was just kind of navigating through all that and trying to not say the wrong thing to the wrong people. And, but I
Yeah.
mean, there's some good and bad memories, but overall it was pretty rough at
Yeah,
the beginning.
yeah. And so do you think that the disease run in your family at all? Do you think that was part of the, because I know you struggled with some stuff and we'll get into that in a second, but I'm just trying to connect the dots as well. Like,
Yeah.
because sometimes it comes from the habits you acquire from just kind of being the punk on the streets, hanging out in the environment, or sometimes it's just kind of inherited through DNA. And what do you
Yeah.
think? Yeah.
I think it's two things. It was in my DNA. On my mother's side, she liked to drink. She drank a lot. My grandfather, so there's that side, the what I inherited, and then there's the other emotional childhood traumas that when I first drank my first drink at 16, it was blackout. I black out like complete. I never understood how and why you would drink in moderation. Like I never, when it hit me, there was a relief that happened that I couldn't understand what it was. And I recognized alcoholism early on because I was very resentful of my house and what was happening to my mom. And she would have too much. I would kind of lose my parent in that.
Mm,
So I swore off alcohol, but I couldn't deny once I took that drink that it affected me differently.
hmm.
It wasn't a normal couple drinks, go to bed kind of thing. It was a relief that I pretty much attached to all that childhood trauma and what I inherited through the disease of alcoholism.
Yeah.
I was prime and ready. I was half Native American, half Scotch Irish, and I had childhood problems and daddy issues, so I was ready. Alcoholism was my destiny.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah.
then you go on the road and then you join a band where that culture, as
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, is everything.
Oh yeah, that just feeds into all that. But before we go too much deeper into that, I also want to learn. So you grew up in this environment, and so you had hints of this alcoholism that already running through your bloodline or whatever. So that's kind of like staging this whole life, for what maybe is to come, especially since you go down the road of music and decide to take that on as a career or pursue that. But what like who was your guy? Who was the guy that made you want to play guitar? Like for me, the funniest thing is I had been a musician my whole life, as you know. I played since I was very young. 3.5 years
Sure.
old, I started taking lessons. But I was a musician. I was playing music. I was never like a rock star. I was never gonna be, that. I was just playing music. Like that was my hobby. It was fun. But until I got into smoking weed and I was in my early teens, believe it or not, it wasn't even a drummer that made me want to be the rock star. Like I became hugely influenced when I came out of like my Buddy Rich phases and all that jazz stuff that I was listening to through my dad and my upbringing. Then it became John Bonham and Neil Peart and those kind of things. But the guy
Yeah.
that made me want to be a rock star was Joe Perry. It was a guitarist that made me want
Really?
to like do that for a living. Because when I bought, because obviously Aerosmith, a Boston-based, coolest rock band ever, and but when I bought that live bootleg record and I opened it up, as a matter of fact, the first record I ever bought was Aerosmith Rocks with my own money. That was my first album. But then I
Nice.
got live bootleg, and when I opened it up, there was a small little picture of Joe Perry amongst a whole collage of pictures that he's standing, the camera's shooting from behind him so you can see a sea of people in a stadium, and he's holding up this red BC Rich, and he's got his hair in front of his face and the blonde streak, and I go, fuck that. That's what I want to be. And from that point I grew my hair out and I knew I was going to be like a rock star. That was where I wanted to go. So who was your guy that like, kind of zapped you with the bug that made you go, oh, okay, I'm going to play guitar, or was it a different instrument first?
It was drums at first, but it was my father at the core of it. But what really took it to the level you're talking about, where like it was a passion and obsession, I had best friend Joey Jakes, Mike Jakes' brother, I was telling you about.
Yeah.
He was a huge Ozzy fan, and I had moved in right behind him, and I would go to his house and look at the posters, and he had all the Ozzy and there was an ACDC poster in particular where I saw Angus, and there was something about that his whole persona, man, and I heard Back in Black, and I was kind of getting introduced to all these bands through Joey. and I loved music. It was always there, but like a specific genre of music, metal, which was like I wasn't really, I didn't know a lot about it. He introduced me to that, so I fell in love with AC/DC, and then it was Ozzy and Kiss and all these huge personas, that helped me escape from that childhood that I was not really enjoying at that time. I found this family and I found this culture that was, it was me. It was a way to escape, man. It was like I needed it, man. If I hadn't had that, I would have, it was the only thing that gave me that true.
So was it collectively like just the perception of all these bigger bands and what they were doing kind of as a unit? Or was there one person that you seen him play? Like for Nuno, I asked him, and hands down, it was Eddie Van Halen. He goes, fuck, when I seen him play, it was fucking like, I have to do that, So I didn't know if there was like one dude that really stuck out for you or not.
Man, maybe in the drum world, it was, it was really like all kinds of different drummers. To be honest with you, as a drummer, as a really young drummer, the drummer for Devo, there was a beat and Whip It that hi-hat, and it was like in a very early age, right when I was getting introduced to this, I had heard that song and Whip It, and there's something about the hi-hat, and even looking back at that, recognizing, yeah, and that was like the thing to play.
Fucking weird song.
I know, right? I mean, it's like I wanted to have more of a manly kind of, but it really, honestly, that was the first thing where, like, in terms of one particular drummer, I remember a year woodshedding that part.
Wow.
And then it was the guitar, and then that was, my father being the core. I mean, I got to give credit to him for that. Yeah. But then once you introduce Eddie Van Halen, Angus Young, those guys, it was, I just met all of them in one party.
Right. You got introduced to rock and roll. That's what happened.
Yeah, it was one after the other. And
then your life went to shit right after.
Absolutely.
That's when all of our lives get destroyed. This is going to be the best thing ever. And then,
yeah. I mean, but yeah, it was the beginning of the end, man. But it was great. It was really cool, man.
Well, I'll tell you, I remember fast forwarding a little bit to the first time when I had heard you after I hadn't seen you for a while, because I had left. So I moved to Fayetteville in December of 85, and I left in December of 89. So in those 4 years, I went through a slew of different kind of bands and projects, just trying to find my way. I was just excited to be there in the first place because, Lawrence, I always had my music, but Lawrence was a big trouble zone for me. And it was just always having that feeling of I'm missing something. Like I could be home in the comfort of my own house with my mom, feeling safe as a young kid, and that whole watching TV, being with your sister, whatever it is. And then there's that thing that scratches away at you that like your friends are on the street and you're missing something. And then you get out there and there's not a lot going on, and then you find fucking trouble, right? And so that pattern for me just got more and more dangerous. And so when I went, I found this new, like, I had a new reason. I wasn't going to a new state to find trouble. I was going there to find like, oh, I wonder what other musicians do here and what are they playing? Because now we're in the mid to late 80s, right? So we're like, music was amazing back then as far as the, pop rock was like, it was metal as far as like the Motley Crues and the Skid Rows, and it was all that stuff that was real, the Priests, the Maidens, the Aerosmiths. So music back then, if you remember, it was like, it was really important because it was in the forefront of everything, where now it's like pop music and that kind of stuff. And, pop music being just popular music. That's what it is. It's not that pop music is Justin Bieber or Metallica or country. Pop music is whatever the popular music is that dominates the radio.
At that particular time.
So then, so I meet all you guys and we all had a great time and getting to know each other a little bit and playing and gigs and going to watch each other play. There was a lot of general support too back there, I remember, and I think that kind of mentality follows our generation, because even in today in our bands, we follow each other, even if it's behind the scenes. I'll check in on you and the guys from Sevendust or what you're doing with your solo stuff, and just kind of make sure or just see what people are up to. And I know that we all do that. We're not in touch as much, but I think that comes from those days where back then music was so important. We followed each other. We supported each other. We knew if we didn't show up, there wouldn't be a whole lot of people in the club watching us. So we had to support your friends, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do that to this day. I mean, I watched the video thing you did with all the kids, and that whole video, and it's the same thing. I see you doing something back in the day. I'm like, we pushed each other. There was a healthy competition.
Yep.
That culture we had in that small town, it was, there was a really good group of people, musicians, and that's because everyone was pushing each other. I go see your band. I'm like, fuck, man, they just killed the crowd. They did this, and we go back to our little drawing board and refine our craft and then wait for that next show to try to depress the other musicians.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was just a thing, and then to this day, I watch that. I watch you do something, or another guy in another band that I've got history with. I'm like, man, that's cool. I'm glad he's doing that. Damn, I wish I'd have thought of that. Those kind of things,
Yeah.
man. And I think that's so healthy. It's important, man.
Well, back then too, we weren't overstimulated with the internet and all the stuff that keeps, people
Yeah,
now, all of us at their fingertips, and it's real easy for them to just check in, see what's going on, what we look like, what we're up to, whatever. Back then, we didn't have that, so it's the same mentality as like we're teaching our kids. We're like, go out and throw a rock into the lake. And, I'd rather have my daughter throw a rock through someone's window and run from the cops than just sit home on YouTube all the time, because at
yeah,
least it's some kind of life experience. I don't want her to
absolutely.
get in trouble, obviously. But my point is that back in the day, we were out walking the streets, finding each other. And when music came into our lives and we were playing music, it's no wonder why we all went to go support and watch music, because there wasn't really anything else to do unless you were going
Yeah,
to sit at someone's house and drink and party and smoke cigarettes or whatever. So when there was a show to go see, that's what you went to do. You weren't going like, I'm good right now. I got to, go on YouTube and watch the new Foo Fighters concert or whatever.
yeah. It's a completely different world, and I never want to be the old guy saying, "Well, back in the day, but it was a unique time to grow up. There were really positives, and I think that this generation too. Because, like you said, it's so easy to access information, bands, concerts. Like, people ask me, man, do you give guitar lessons? I'm like, just go to YouTube, type in anything you want to know. Next thing you have Nuno Betancourt up there, like, hey, it's
Yeah.
showing you so much content and there's so much information. And I think that's the pro, and the con is, like you're saying, people get stuck in that world and don't go outside and breathe and experience human
Or
connection.
experiment with those things that you do discover, because I think part of our journey growing up, and by going to live events and doing this and doing that outside, is you just got to figure it out. Like you were saying, you'd
Yeah,
watch somebody and you go, oh shit, I'm going to fucking try that with my band. And then you figure shit out and you try things, and it's kind of what helps create and become an innovator in a sense,
yeah,
where a lot of people today, they just rely on the internet and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, my point to this whole thing is that there was this really special time in music, because you had to go out and explore. Record stores meant a lot back then. There was all that world existed where like music was really an experience and a journey. And today I know it is for people as well, but it's quick fixes, it's quick hits. The attention span is very short. Where back then, if you got an album, you would listen to the whole record over and over again, because that's what you had to do. You bought a record, it didn't matter if your friends were going to come over and listen to it with you or not. You were going to go home. The first thing you were doing was listening to this record front to back. And then you'd figure out if you're going out that weekend or whatever.
yeah,
And I remember that. That was during this era in the '80s, and then we detached for a while, because I went back home after December of '89. I was just kind of tired of Fayetteville. I didn't feel like it was producing anything more for me musically, and I kind of hit my end there. And I was missing my friends, I was missing my hometown, because I grew up in the city. I wasn't like a country guy. So I
yeah,
went home, and then I didn't hear from you guys for a while. And then years later, right as we were starting to form Godsmack, Robbie had come up to me, and my bass player, and he goes, oh, you got to hear this band. And he threw this CD, and it was called Sevendust, right? And I go, all right, cool, I'll check it out. And I had no idea you were in the band. And he was just like, oh my God, this band is so sick. You got to hear these guys. It's ridiculous. We got to step up our game, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh shit. So I play it and I'm really like jamming on the CD. And obviously the first song I'd heard was Black. I didn't hear it on the radio or anything like that. I heard it through my bass player. And that opening riff happened with the tremolo, you know, that staccato kind of thing, and the what is it, a wah pedal and a tremolo that you
it's a wah and a tremolo, yeah.
And when that band came in, it exploded, and then the singer, and I'm going, oh my God, and it's a black dude, holy shit, this guy's got a huge voice, and like it was so killer. And then I'm looking, I go, oh my fuck, it's fucking Clint Lowery. I go, Robbie, I know this dude, and he's like, no, you don't, and he's like, oh, you guys were coming to, I think it was Great Woods or someone, you were touring with someone at the time, and you were coming through on some tour. And so I was like, oh, we're gonna go see this, and from that point, I was like, holy shit. It's when I started to try to reconnect with you. But I remember the first time I heard the record, I was like, I remember the energy of the band visually after seeing some stuff live with you guys, and just the record in general. It was just so percussive. I think that's what really drew me into it. So hearing that you started on drums doesn't surprise me now, because I think as I became a songwriter too and figured out how to play guitar, I was never good at playing guitar because I can't play a lead to save my life. I don't know what the scales are. I don't know any of that shit.
Right.
I'm just percussive. I try to use it as a tool in my toolbox, like piano or anything else I do. Even vocally, I think I naturally just tend towards leaning towards rhythm and not so much melody and things like that. Later, that started to develop a little bit more for me. But your thing for me that hooked me in was just those real tight chug hooks and the percussiveness of Sevendust. So what I wanted to ask you about that was, on that first record, right? Were you guys influenced at all? Because I hear a little bit of Biohazard in songs like Too Close to Hate, because of the chorus and then the counter lines that Morgan sings, right? It was a real kind of like Brooklyn style metal thing. And I wanted to ask you, was that part of the bands that you were listening to back then in a sense, or was it just coincidence?
Because my brother had joined Stuck Mojo, which was another pretty dominant.
I remember them.
Band. And so they were on tour with Biohazard, and they did a bunch of stuff with them in Europe at the time. I remember my brother coming home with this Biohazard swag and stuff. So they were definitely on our radar. I wouldn't say it was like one of the heavy influence, in terms of musically, attitude-wise, aggression-wise. They were definitely part of that whole scene. That, in particular, at that time, they were really they were one of the beginning stages of that. They were one of those bands that just, they had this aggression I liked. It was the groove that Pantera had that introduced me to, like, okay, you can have this danceable element to it. And I say danceable, that would have made any metalhead cringe. But to me, there was a groove. I could listen to a bunch of R&B and everything when I grew up. Like, I was really into funk and stuff because of drums and my dad. So I love when you could marry that aggression and that thing. And I heard Pantera, I'm like, that's a damn groove. And like, Cowboys from Hell, and you first hear that, there's an actual groove to it.
Yep.
So that's what I loved about Sevendust. I'd heard a few of their demos before when I was the last one to join in the early days. And that was one thing I'm like, this is the opportunity that I've been waiting for, to actually be able to marry groove, heavy music, attitude, screaming, yet these R&B melody lines that Lejean was able to do.
Yeah.
So, that was the beauty of it. But Biohazard was definitely, they were a part of our culture. And
I only hear it on that one song. Like, I just hear, and I'm not saying that like it was a Biohazard ripoff. It just felt to me, and I hadn't heard Biohazard in so long. Well, at the time I did actually, but now, like, revisiting it, sometimes like I'm in the gym working out and I'll put on a mix of things and Sevendust will pop up. And one of the songs that came on the other day when I was boxing was Too Close to Hate.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, it reminds me of like Wrong Side of the Tracks or something like that from Biohazard, where they just had that kind of bouncy thing. And then their vocals were real. They always had like a couple different singers that would bounce off of each other. And I'm like, it feels Biohazard to me.
Maybe that's what it was. I didn't really put two and two together. But
was Stuck Mojo your brother's band before Sevendust?
Well, when my brother and I were playing together at the time, and Morgan was kind of courting me to kind of join the band. They weren't super happy with their guitar player at the time, um, and Morgan and I were always friends. I loved him as a drummer, so he was always kind of romancing me in. He had actually played like the very first draft of Black in the parking lot of one of my shows in his car. The first draft didn't have the intro or anything; it was just the song, and it had different vocals on it. And it had
Oh,
like
wow.
John singing in it. It was like the first incarnation. And I was like, and it affected me the same way it affected you. Like, I'm like, what is this? This
Yeah.
is so different.
It was
Uh,
powerful.
yeah, it was. It was. It's what it really. That little demo, that piece of that song, is what made me quit my established band at the time.
Wow.
So Corey and I made a decision. Stuck Mojo was a huge band there. They were pretty much ahead of Sevendust. They were like really packing rooms. Rich
Oh,
Ward,
cool.
guitar player, had this whole thing, and so we were Sevendust were like the understudies of that band. We were the new version of that band, and so me and Corey decided, okay, let's join these bands. Let's take a risk. Let's break away our musical ties, and let's join. He joined Stuck Mojo, and I went to Crawl Space, which became Sevendust.
Yeah. I remember too. So you guys were a little bit ahead of us. When did you actually join Seven Dust?
I joined Sevendust like '95.
Oh, so about the same time Godsmack started.
Yeah, and then '96 we got a record deal by
Hmm.
accident. So yeah, and we did a record and sat for a year before we even played a show. We
So
went
did your
back.
record come out in 97?
It was like late '96.
Okay, so yeah, you guys were like a little over a year ahead of us because I remember this because then so we formed in 95. We weren't called Godsmack yet. A year later we changed it to that. But then we released in 90 we released a demo in 97, but we didn't sign till 98, June of 98. And so then they put us on the road. And so we had a similar path, but I remember this specifically about Seven Dust. So
Oh
we were
God.
doing really good in Boston. We were selling out all the clubs. We had the buzz. We were kind of the band that was buzzing at that time. Looking back now, I didn't realize at the time because you're so immersed
Yeah,
into
yeah.
trying to sell the band. But and then we get the deal, and then they put us on this national tour, and we're doing like bars around the States. And it was real humbling because as soon as we left our line of scrimmage, we're playing to the bartender and a couple of
Yeah.
local drunks that are like sleeping at the table, and we're like, this
Same here, man.
sucks. And then we
Same
met up
here.
with you guys, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but when we broke the bubble, you were our first not co-headlining support band that we were the yeah you were the first national band that we were supporting and we met
Yeah, I
up with.
remember. I
And I
remember.
think it was the Moose Lodge. Is that right? The Moose Lodge?
Yeah,
The
and
Moose Knuckle? What the fuck is it called?
I don't know, man.
It was the Moose something.
I don't
You don't
know.
remember? It was like in a basement and the ceilings were real low.
I remember, but listen. I have an article somewhere in my house where you and I are on that particular run. We play Fayetteville, and Fayetteville did a little spread. Fayetteville Observer did a little
Oh,
spread. Two hometown boys coming home making good. It was like an article. I remember hearing about you. Like, man, Sully's in this band, and I saw a picture, and I'm like, no, he's a drummer. Like, no, he's singing. I said, that son of a bitch made
yeah.
the move over. Like,
I
you
made
got
the move.
on the drums. Like, I'm gonna do this.
I made the move. It was scary as fuck. But I
Oh, I
remember
can't
seeing you guys. I remember seeing you guys. We walked into this place. I want to say it was in Tennessee. I'm not positive, but I remember it was called the Moose something, or it was just the Moose. But I thought it was the Moose. Well, I don't know what the fuck. Maybe I'm thinking of the Flintstones, but it was the Moose something. And it was a lower level club. Like there was a street level restaurant or something, but it was
Yeah,
down. Or it was all one club, but the stage part was down, and the ceilings I remember were real low, and the stage was really fucking tight, and there was no room for us to even fit up on there. And I remember we get up there and we played in front of your crowd, and I felt like we did okay. And then you guys hit the stage, and I went, "Oh fuck, this is not good, guys." It was like huddle up in the dressing room meeting real quick. We
yeah.
better
It was
step
funny.
because. And let me say this too, real quick, before you respond. You guys had told us at that point I hadn't seen you in forever, and you said, like, we were all excited. We're like, it's our first national tour, and you guys were like, yeah, whatever, fucking, we've been on the road for 20 months doing this, and you guys were at the tail end of just about to close out that record. So there was just no excitement from you guys. You were burnt. You were at the end of the tail, the tour, and I'm like, we were just so happy to be there, and we were on opposites.
But oh man, just and I remember though, I was really excited for you, and I remember you guys. I mean, when it did catch on, it was fast, and it was cool, and always seeing you want to see your friends succeed, but at the same time, like you said, at the very end of that, when you guys were we were like kind of tapping out, and you guys were clinging in, and then it was just we were off watching you guys basically just throw down. So whatever little humility you had for that little bit, fast 4 years later, festivals were like 7 bands before you. You guys are doing your thing, so man, and I always tell people, I say, me and Sully were friends for a long time, but I'm glad we were cool and hopefully respectful to you guys, because you never know, man. In this business, around a ton of bands that opened up for us that went on and did huge things. And we're actually a band that's known for, you open up for Sevendust, you're going to go on and do these great things. And I mean, there was a time it was you, I'm sorry, Kid Rock, you, and us. We were on tour, and I always use that story. I'm like, you never know. Be cool to everybody, man. You never know. But you've done one of those things that you've always paid back to us. You guys had success. You've done well. You've always reached back. We've done shows. We've done tours together. You helped kind of keep us on the radar at times. You've always said nice things about us in the press. It was always cool, man. So I'm just glad things turned out the way they did, and I appreciate you always being super supportive, and you've been a good friend to me many years, man. So
well, thank you. Yeah, and same here, and it's you're one of those guys that I've admired for a very, very long time, and I've told you this to your face many times, and I mean it, man. Besides our friendship, I just have so much respect for you as a songwriter, as a musician, as a performer. You're one of those guys that not only the first time we seen Sevendust, we're like, oh my God, there was no... It's kind of the same story that I tell people that, like, I was a drummer my whole life and I was a really good fucking drummer.
Yeah.
And then I seen Shannon and I went, okay, drums are going through the wood chipper. Fuck this instrument. I'm like, he had so much visual about him. Not only was his chops amazing, but his performances, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me with this kid?
Great, man. He is by far the template for so many drummers. Morgan gives him credit. I mean, everyone needs to give him credit.
Totally.
If you're a visual drummer at all with any of that swag that Shannon has, he was the new kid.
Bevan, I mean, everybody just got hooked and bit by him.
Yeah.
But it was the same thing for Sevendust, dude. Like, you guys came out and you were like fucking balls to the wall. The performance was on 11 every night. And I remember the dressing room smelled like Ben Gay and fucking Ace Bandages. And, you guys were so beat up and like, we need to go home and work on another record and heal. Yeah. I remember that. And we were just like, what do you mean? We just got here. And you're like, yeah, no, we're going. We're just fucking. Everyone's like beat up and shit after being on the road for 20 months. But I really do love your songwriting. I love your melody choices. Like, in my eyes, I always have said, I think, and I still believe this, that, and we can even touch a bit upon this. I don't want to dig too deep into the background of your band and what went on behind the scenes there, but I do feel that you guys have always been one of the most underrated bands out there. I really feel like when I tell people about Sevendust and the road that I remember seeing Dust taking, I think it was a combination of you got fucked by old management and record label bullshit, which we all learned that this business is horrible most of the time, and you just get screwed when you don't know what you're doing and you have no business sense. But how do we know that when we're supposed to just be musicians? We're not accountants. We're not fucking business managers. We're not lawyers. We're just musicians. And so when you don't know the business as a business, that's when you get screwed. And so I think that was a part of why maybe Sevendust didn't go to a stadium level, but I seen you guys equivalent to like a Rage Against the Machine, and I still do. I think the power, the energy of the music and all that should have been right fucking there with that. But what I have really admired over all the years, besides my perception of what I feel Sevendust should have always been, is you being behind it, the backbone to it. I know you, and I know you well enough, and I can hear the songwriting, and I know that's fucking Clint Lowery songs. I know the lyrics, I know the melodies, I know the riffs, and I'm like, I don't care who tries to take credit for that shit. If you guys ever have the inner brawls in the band and all that shit, but I know who the hidden hero is behind a lot of that stuff. And I just want to say that I think it's amazing what you do, and I don't think you did anything wrong, dude. I think maybe just the path of the wrong business people in the early days and all that could tip things upside down, because once you lose so many years in your hut spots and you don't have the right people, like, pushing you up that fucking ladder,
Yeah.
then you lose those magic years in a way too, right? And then
Yeah,
you get a little
absolutely.
older and you're trying to like chase your youth in a sense, right?
Absolutely, man. I mean, you said it perfectly. There were a couple times, and looking back in hindsight, there was a couple moments, maybe when we released Animosity, the third record, there was a lot of momentum there. There was an opportunity to do the breakout, that
Yeah.
one moment or two or three moments you have in your career. Honestly, not to get long winded about it, I like to take a little more accountability instead of blame, because it's easy to blame it on record companies. It's easy to blame it on managers and all that. And as far as the business side of things, yeah, there was tremendous mistakes. Musically, we did everything we wanted to do. We did exactly the songs that we wanted to do it, how we wanted to do it, and that's where I really believe that there. I don't know what the disconnect is on a mass level. If you go to any festival and we're on it, we don't have the songs. There's not one song in our library. We got hundreds of songs that translates to the entire festival crowd. We don't have a song. We have a song that maybe 4,000 people will sing, 3,000, 1,500 people will sing. But we don't have that hit song that was just like the absolute, it's been a while, or a
Yeah, yeah.
ton of songs you have where, I mean, I played a lot of festivals with you, and I'm just being honest. I know that what the thing that makes us a great band is that there's a unique element to it, and a lot of musicians love our band because they know that we take these little clever turns and we try to be a little more unpredictable.
Yes.
But the problem is we have chased the hits. We've written songs specifically. I want this to be as huge as a Godsmack song or a Limp Bizkit or a Korn or
Yeah.
Disturbed. We
Yeah.
want that. We've been chasing that our whole life,
Yeah.
but for some reason we never got it. And I don't really blame our band. I just think that it's something about our recipe that never went to a global level. And so maybe that's it. Maybe we had the success that has been pretty standard and flat line through. It's a mid-level success that I'm very proud of.
Totally.
We didn't hit these huge peaks, but we don't hit the low bottoms that some of these bands that were huge, they just disappear. So we're still here. We're still doing it. We're still thankful.
Yeah,
But man,
and by the way, don't think by any way, shape, or form am I discrediting that or invalidating
yeah,
it.
no,
I'm on the other end of it, and I always thought, like, why the fuck, like, knowing behind the scenes. I've learned a lot of this information through you over time, just having
right.
general conversations about your earlier manager and the record label and all the shit you went through with all that crap, right? And it was fucking crazy. Like, you guys literally got chewed up and spit out so many times, and you still overcame and you still survived, and you get out there and you worked and you worked and you worked. And that's what made Sevendust fans Sevendust. And it can even, you'll see as we talk about it, the people, like, how many thumbs up will come that people love Sevendust. Your band is well known. Trust me. I really think a lot of it was the industry and having the wrong people doing the right thing for you at a time when
Yeah,
you needed it the most. Because those first two records, those early magical years for any band, everyone's first record is that life story. I've talked about it on the show where, like, it's that breakout moment, and it's in those baby, infant stages of a band exploding, which you guys came out and you were making a big impact. That song Black and Bitch
yeah, yeah.
and Terminator, all that stuff was like, people were going, there was a buzz going. And in those infant stages, you need the parent, whoever the parent is, to be able to, like, do the right thing.
Put you in the better positions. Yeah,
Yeah. And so, I just I've always like really loved your music. I love you guys. I love you as a songwriter, and I think actually one of the best pieces I've ever heard you write. And if people haven't seen this yet, I want people to look it up on YouTube or whatever. But one of my favorite pieces that you wrote, and it's why I always haunt you about maybe doing a project together, me and you, even if it's in an acoustic sense or whatever, was the song you wrote called Angel Sun, about Lynn Strait and his
Yeah,
passing when he died in a car crash, right? Is that what that song's about?
yeah, yeah.
You guys were tight with him because I remember you guys came through Fayetteville. I was there for some reason, and I just remember Dennis, your tour manager at the time. They're like, the guys aren't doing well. They're not going to see anyone today. They're just going to perform and go. And it's right
Yeah,
when you guys had found out. So
we're the Flaming Mug of all places. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, that was, I mean, I'd actually had that piece of music for Angel Sun for a while acoustically, something I noodled around with quite a bit. And then Mikey had asked me, he said, man, we're doing this straight up thing for Lynn. We love you guys. You guys are our brother band. We'd like you to contribute a song. All the songs are being done. Musically, we've done them all. We're getting these new singers, but we would like you guys to actually write a song for it. And I'd had that piece of music, and I'd had the chorus written vocally, and everything kind of put together for it. And we just found some time to get in and kind of do it, and went out to LA, and then recorded some of the vocals in Phoenix. And LeJean sang the verses like off the cuff right out in the studio. We didn't have any verses or anything, and it was a good tribute to a really good guy. The spirit of everything that was going on then. Lynn was that guy. You know, he was just out of his mind. But that song is manifested in so many different ways. I want to call it one of my proudest moments musically. It's like maybe that, and the amount of people that have come up and said, man, this was used for a funeral. This was you that really helped me through. That's been the song that has made me feel more connected to people over the years, and to share that with the guys in Snot and LeJean and all that, to share all that with them, and it was just an unbelievable experience. And that is to me the hit of my life, and
yeah.
people still talk about it. And for you and I to connect on that, I mean, that really, you and I, how many times have we had conversations about songs like that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you know, so it's been a good bridge, man,
Yeah.
to people. You
It's
know,
it's an amazing song, and you guys got to check it out if you haven't seen it yet. And I think there's even two versions of it on YouTube, right? There's one that's more like a studio style version of it, and then
yeah,
there's the one that you guys actually what they did in the concept of this. So if anybody doesn't know who Lynn Strait was, he was the singer for a band called Snot, and I never got to know Lynn, but I know you guys were real close with him, and Shannon was very close with him. And but in the video, the one that I want you guys to look for is the one where Sevendust is performing acoustically on the beach around a campfire,
yeah.
and you had, I think Lynn's mom was in the video.
There's girl.
And
All,
you'll see a lot of friendly faces in that video, a lot of celebrities, and everyone's
yeah,
kind of just circling around, kind of remembering the memory of Lynn. And somehow you found a stand-in that looked like just like Lynn Strait, and you put a
yeah,
little effect on him so it gave it that kind of spirit form. And he just kind of goes around and puts his hand on everyone's shoulder as you guys are singing the song about. Oh my God, I could fucking cry right now just thinking about it. It's
yeah.
so,
Great video,
it's
man.
powerful, man. But the
It was a
song
good
is
experience, man.
beautiful, like really, really beautiful. You talk about sometimes you hear a song and go, fuck, I wish I would have wrote that. That's one song that I go, man, I wish I would have wrote that song, because it's just, I don't know if it's the story behind it and knowing you guys and how you are as people and how much you care and love people, care about people and love people. And so I don't know what it is, or if it's just the melodies and the words, but it's just so moving, man, that if you guys haven't seen this video, you should really write it down while you're watching this episode and look it up, because it's fucking killer.
Thanks,
Killer.
brother. Thank you very much, man. Thank you.
And so you also tell the people a little bit too about your little journey through. You did something for a short amount of time with Korn. You filled in as the guitar player for Korn,
Yeah, yeah. So in
which
my
I never
early,
got to see, but
yeah,
I would have
well,
liked to.
it was interesting, man. First and foremost, the Corn guys were amazing to me. They
Awesome.
all treated me great. it was an interesting dynamic. Without going too much into it, Monkey had called me. I was trying to get sober at the time. I was out of Sevendust. I was kind of finishing the Dark New Day thing, and I got a call from him, casual. Hey, we just did this record. You want to come out and fill in on guitar? And I was a huge Korn fan, still am, and I had an opportunity to learn the songs, and did that. And it was 10 months of my life, some incredible moments. I was at the peak of my alcoholism through that. So unfortunately, I was so caught up in that and what was going on in my life. Basically, some huge highlights of my life, playing shows with them was incredible, but everything behind the scenes was a complete disaster. So I wasn't able to enjoy it for what it was. I had an ego at that time. I felt like I didn't want to, because back then all the guys, the higher guys, were just kind of tucked away in the back, and I had a problem absorbing that humility. I was like, I've earned my stripes in Sevendust. I should be out there. So there was a little bit of attitude I gave them for that, but ultimately they ended up sending me home toward the end of it, and they gave me. I was arrested while I was out with them. I would play shows sober and do all that, but then on my days off, I would fall apart. And they were handling they had other issues in their band at the time, and I was another one on top of those, and they couldn't have it. They needed to protect their band, so they sent me home. And when I see these guys, and I've done tours with them since, and I've talked to each one of them, and it was probably the moment that them sending me back home, it stung, it hurt, but I was falling apart, and
Wow.
that was the moment that I got sober. When they sent me home, a week later I was in rehab.
Wow.
I mean, that was they actually saved my life, and I say that, and I actually said that in press one time, and people misunderstood that, like their music, and the music was great, but what they did when they sent me home, they didn't enable me to stay out there and live that alcoholic life. They cut their ties with me respectfully and very with love. They were like, "We love you, but you got to go." It was the first time I ever got fired, and
Wow.
uh,
I didn't know any of that, man.
yeah, it was, and I'm just so thankful they did. Because Monkey had soon after that he had kind of got did a lot in his life to kind of get in a better place, and so a lot happened. Even the guy that replaced me, Shane Gibson, he actually died from alcoholism.
Wow.
Yeah, they had a lot of interesting situations, but eventually Wes Gear showed up and he did the gig the way it was supposed to be done,
Wow.
in terms of sobriety. But I love those guys for that, man. And it's one of those things that I wouldn't take it back. I'd love to go back and jam with them in just one show in a good headspace,
Yeah.
because I mean, it's been 12 and a half years, man.
Wow. So I was just going to ask you, how long you been sober for now? 12 and a half?
Yeah, October, they sent me home.
It's
Thanks, man.
awesome.
Thank,
Seriously.
they
That's a
sent me
huge
home.
accomplishment, man. I remember you in the dark days, and it's so easy to spin out of control. And we've had a few of these discussions with people that have come on and shared their stories, but I actually remember some of those years with you, and I remember the
Yeah,
look. You can just tell, and I've partied my whole life. I was fortunate in a way somehow where I didn't have the addictive gene run through me. I guess I probably shouldn't say that, but because I did so much damage along the way, maybe I just never recognized it as an addiction.
it's
But
hard in our lifestyle. It's hard because you can't tell, because it's not a 9 to 5 job where you get exposed. It's a badge of honor.
yeah,
You go out and you play a show, you get hammered. People are like,
and there's
"Oh,
a
you're great."
cool, yeah, there's like this
Yeah,
whole persona of like Shannon actually said it the best. When he got sober finally, he hit his rock bottom when we were out touring in Europe. And he was like you, he was a blackout drunk. Like when he hit it, there was no couple of drinks over a steak dinner and then you go home and get a good night's sleep and you still kind of feel fine. It's like on or off, and that's it.
I
And
remember.
and
Yeah,
and he was saying that one of his biggest things he struggled with when he knew he had to get straight was if he thought people were going to think he was cool anymore. Because when you're in rock and roll and you're all tatted up and you smoke butts and you're on stage like Jimmy Page, like there's a whole like visual that goes with that we grew up with, that we like, fuck, they're so cool looking. When Aerosmith was in their biggest drug days is the
yeah.
times that I thought they looked and played the best, right? Alice in Chains, like the music those guys were pumping out and they were fucked up on heroin. And I'm going, This is
I just watched
amazing.
that. I watched that last night. I watched them doing Rooster on that MTV Unplugged. And I was like, it was the most genius performance that Lane ever did. And I had a little of those few rock and roll cliche attachments. I feel like it's evolved a bit. And then, I believe that people now, they kind of want to see people with their shit together a little bit. I think people want
Yeah.
to see musicians that are fit, that have a focus to them. There's definitely a rock and roll element that is cool. I love the rebellious. As a young person growing up, I remember I wanted those people to be out of their minds. I wanted to believe the singers and the guitar players were living these crazy lives. It was
Yeah.
part of what I liked. But now I just feel like it's changed a little bit. I would think maybe because I'm so removed from that lifestyle. But when I see a singer on stage that looks and feels good and is real
Connects.
and has that real good just confidence,
Yeah.
that's what I like. I like watching that,
Yeah, and you can see that you're awake. You can see that you're clear from
Yeah.
the Clint I remembered a long time ago. Same thing with Shannon. When you talk to Shannon now, he's a whole different guy because everyone knew Shannon as Cocktail Eddie. He was always
Oh yeah, man.
smashing lights in the hotel rooms and tackling people and just he was a mess. Didn't remember any of it, but he was that. But people gravitated towards it. It was fun to hang out with him. He was funny. He was wasted. But now you see him and he's clear, and there's something so cool about that he's awake. You can see that he listens when you talk. He absorbs like it's a different Shannon. Before it used to be all over the road, and
Yeah.
I think there's something cool about that too. And I think the fans don't realize how much they appreciate it. But when you get to meet your favorite musicians now too, that are coherent and they are awake and they are paying attention to what you say and they do connect to your stories and are responsive and attentive to
Yeah.
you, to them speaking with you. It's a big difference than when you meet your favorite guy and he's a fucking asshole, and
Yeah. And
because
that's
I
happened
remember,
a lot.
yeah, I let me,
I've treated people that way before, and one of the biggest things now, we have that VIP culture, and we're meeting a lot of people, and
or do we?
yeah, exactly. I mean, it depends, but I really believe that there is, with the last 12 years of my career, remembering those things, being focused. One of the biggest things I had to learn in my sobriety was just not judging others that still drink, that still do those things. Because one thing about quitting drinking was something I needed to do to live for me. But the second chapter and second part of that was, okay, well, now what? Do I want to remain a dry drunk, or do I want to make some changes? I want to start treating people better. Do I want to start, just becoming more fit, becoming more connected to what, just people in general. And so that's been the hardest part. Just realizing the ego and the fear and all these other things that manifest in my life. So the alcohol, that's gone. Now I have no excuses.
Yeah.
It's I am who I am. So there's been a humility to that, and just trying to find out and find that peace. And that's really what fitness is about to me. And that's why it's important to not judge others, to have this empathy with other musicians, because you never know. There's been a lot of musicians that come up to me, man, I've been watching you from a distance, and what do you do, man? I don't want to come off preaching. I don't want to come off with this on some type of pedestal. I just want to say I'm a musician that was lucky enough to get enough humility, and I call it the gift of desperation. When Korn sent me home, I got divorced. I lost my job. I lost a lot of friends. It was a necessary evil for me to open my mind and start doing some different things. So now to talk to other musicians or people in general and share that information, share that experience with them, and to see a light come on in them, it's just it's such a rewarding thing, man, because it's a deadly thing for me. It's as serious as anything can be. The alcoholism was a huge part. It robbed me of so much joy, man, for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
And my life now, I mean, there's no tremendous, I'm on the top of a mountain doing, cocaine and alcohol with, on top of a mountain with eagles flying around. There's none of those highs, but there aren't any of the lows. And it's just, I'm maintaining my life, man.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy either,
You're right, and I was going to ask you about that too, because there's always the the rewards that come unexpectedly, that you feel you're chasing kind of your whole life, but you never get those kind of rewards from living that lifestyle, because that lifestyle is about selfishness and ego, right? When you think
Yeah.
about it. But the things that you really crave and you want, like love and attention and peace of mind and a wife and kids and respect and honor and that kind of thing, those
Yeah.
things, you don't really get those things. But once you change your habits and your lifestyle, everyone who worries about those things should know that those things sometimes just happen later, because then you just get them and you don't work for them, because you attract the right positive people in your life that complement who you're trying to be now as you heal yourself and continue to rehabilitate your lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I think what people would like to hear from you, because I really relate to you as I do to myself in a lot of ways, when it comes to, there's so many, how do I say this? There's so many ways that people see me that they just feel like, man, he's just a smart kid. He's got his shit together, great band, great performer, whatever. And they don't know off screen the inner demons and the things you struggle with even after you get your life together, because it's just part of life. It's part of like what we have to deal with. We're not always asked or put in a position where, bad things come our way or challenges or obstacles come our way, but it's just part of like life and the things that are thrown at us, whether you're drunk or whether you're sober. And so you do all this work, you heal yourself, you rehabilitate yourself, you get to the other side, you're recovered, and you're living a different lifestyle. You know you'll never go back to that, or at least you hope you never will. And but then you have these new challenges that you face with, and then there's those times where you feel dark again, right? And you got to know what to do in those times so you don't slip back to the wrong escape, because you need to remember what tempted you to go in that direction in the first place, which was to numb the pain and the trauma and whatever you went through earlier,
Right.
to not feel that, and then you get addicted to that, to those kind of abusive behaviors and things like that. So when you feel those dark moments and you feel the demon tapping you on the shoulder, not so much to take a sip, but pressure. Pressure can
Yeah.
feel like the thing knocking on your brain that sometimes gets people. And I bring this up because some people are having a hard time with the isolation that we're being forced with and all that. And they're trying to do the right thing and they're staying positive, but as months and months and months go on, they're going like, I don't know how much stronger I can be. And that's where I think it helps to hear from people like yourself that are living through it with a past to begin with, and
Yeah.
how you're staying mentally strong.
I mean, there's been tools that were implemented in my recovery and my sobriety early on that have served me well through this pandemic, and that uncertainty that I feel like is giving everyone the fear that you're talking about. A lot of these things, these tools, just put in place the same way that I've always put in place when I deal with anything that's out of my control, and that's really what this is. It's things that are out of all of our control. It's rocked everyone's world. But there's one particular cliche, and I hate the cliches because they're so true. And that's when I first got sober. It was like the one day at a time thing. Well, oh man, here we go. But that is the design of living for me. I have struggled with depression, deep dark depression through my sobriety, anger, tremendous bouts with the ego, and when I got sober, I had this really I'm a holier than now. I've got the answers to life and all that. So there was all these different things. I was pushing a lot of people away, and so there's been a lot of bouts that I've had through sobriety, which is really, being sober. I got my emotions back. That's good news. And the bad news is I got my emotions back, and I was actually living and experiencing these emotions. And I think all that's important. Tools that I use, just my default setting in life is I wake up, I'm in a dark headspace. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm a fraud. I'm an imposter. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make a living for my family. All these fears, and it's like void. It's like fear of impending doom. It's just what happens when I wake up. And I have these things that I do. I do a daily gratitude list. I do several gratitude lists every single day. and it kind of helps rewire. And it's something I've done from the very beginning, and I still do. And I put this out there, and a few people kind of read on them, and they it helps them. But to me, it's just about rewiring my mind and trying to put these tools and these experiences. Do a lot of reading. I'm very obsessed with fitness. A lot of people you probably talked to about it. There's just something that happens when, and I credit the fitness aspect of my life as keeping me sober as well, as much as my connection to a higher power, as much as my connection to fellowship and all these other things, and making amends and all those things you do. The fitness part is really, it just battles it. There's no question. It just battles depression. It gives off, your body feels better, circulation, it fights off neurological diseases. There's so much that it gives me in terms of restarting my day, and it's a scientific fact that it rewires your brain to be more positive.
Yeah.
Those things are, I mean, there's nothing new. I'm not telling anyone that anything they don't know. But for me, putting those things in, it's a thing where before all these things were uncomfortable, reaching out to people. I love to isolate. I love to be alone. I don't want to be around a lot of people. But to me, I know I need to experience other people. I need to be involved with other people's lives, and I need to be available. So that just goes against my natural coding. So I got to go against some of the things that I really want to do. And the things I don't want to do, I usually need to probably be doing, you know?
Yeah.
It's just about staying busy and staying focused, and not thinking the entire world revolves around me. It's
or
not
staying
about
quiet, right? Because that's another thing that we've been, and I think by hearing Clint talk and hearing James Wahlberg talk and hearing Brent from Shinedown talk and hearing Jacoby talk, the theme is always the same. Like, be active and be vocal about it. If something's starting to like create the ache in your chest, you have to get it out of your body, even if it's onto a piece of paper by saying, fuck you, I hate everything today. Sometimes just screaming in your mind by having it come through a pencil will instantly give you relief. And sometimes it just helps just enough to take the edge off to make it go away. Where when you stay quiet, that's when we create this thing that I call the silent killer, which is depression. And when you're quiet, like Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell, all of our friends that have passed away from this, it's that quiet, it's that isolation that will make you spin and spiral out.
And I think another thing too is not only do I need to be vocal, I need to listen, man. Like a lot of people are so into, here's what my opinion is, here's what I think. I like actually listen. And this is something on my radar right now, is trying to have connections where instead of waiting for someone to finish talking, just like absorbing the words and listening. You can ask many people throughout the day, how are you doing? You never get a real answer. And then when you do get an answer, you immediately start, yeah. I mean, and I believe that people want to be listened to as well. They want to hear, and they want to know other people are out there, but when you do have an opportunity to listen to someone, do it. Because you can tell when someone is preoccupied. You can tell when they don't give a shit.
It's such a great point. And I swear to you, Jim Wahlberg had brought up the exact same thing. He said, first of all, when you ask someone, how are you? You have to be committed to hearing the response.
Yeah. Get out of your own.
Don't ask it if you're not going to commit to like listening and being attentive towards it, because people want to be heard.
Yeah.
I don't want someone looking at it's kind of like you're doing a movie audition and the guy's like, yeah, go ahead. And you're not even watching your audition. What the fuck? Pay attention to me.
Then you're like, okay, this is why I don't talk to people, because it invites, and then expectations. That's a huge thing too. And I have to say that before I get off the tangent, is that expectations. I can't expect you or anyone to do anything. I can control what I can control. Imagine the peace and the beauty of your life if you can really not take it anything personal. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the things that you experience with people and with life situations, it has nothing to do with you. There's nothing that, and this is something I struggle with. It's nothing that I've mastered by any stretch, but I do realize that there's so much more peace in my life, serenity, when if someone is rude or whatever it is, and that I just let it bounce,
Yeah.
and I guess that comes also with age. You start getting to where like I'm going to choose my battles.
Yes.
I can't. Get on social media. It's very easy, and we're all very, very narcissistic these days. The difference is with me as I try to recognize those behaviors, and I don't deny it. I see other people doing things that I do, but I'll get mad at them for doing it. But what it is I'm recognizing my own behaviors in them.
Yeah.
And I see that, and that when you really humble yourself enough to say, okay, let me check my own shit. Let me look at myself and say,
Yep.
what do you know what I mean? So it's like I have to ask. I can't judge the world without looking at myself and say, okay, what are you? What are your real motives?
Yeah.
Why are
True.
you? You know what I mean? Why are you saying that? Why are you doing that? What ego is there? A lot of people talk about charity. They got to be on a mountaintop shouting it out instead of just doing it.
Yeah, it's totally true. I battled the same thing with our first drummer, Tommy. Me and him just butted heads all the time. We were just two different personalities. We thought differently about life. We thought differently about everything. And I always used to point the finger like, oh, it's just he's annoying me. He's annoying me. He's annoying me. And then, then when we had to go get our own help in the earlier days when we were struggling as a band, one of the therapists brought up to me. She goes, I think what you need to look at more isn't what he's doing right now that's annoying you. It's why is what he's doing annoying you? What's going on inside of you that you're getting annoyed by him doing that? And that's the bigger question is check yourself because sometimes, someone could be just doing the dishes loud and you're like, really? I'm trying to read. And no, it's not because they're doing it. It's just like, what's going on inside of you that you're stressed about that, right?
Yeah, it's a great way, even if you're just kind of aware of those things, you're not going to always practice them. I'll leave here, talk to you about all the spiritual awakening stuff, and then I'll kick my dog or
no, don't kick your dog.
It's a practice, and it's just about you do it a couple of times. Oh man, that actually worked out. When my head hit the pillow at night, I'm like, I can sleep a little better because I've made that one little adjustment.
Yeah.
My life to be a better person.
One of it is just not being so impulsive and reactive because I've learned to just wait. If you feel that fire and that adrenaline hit your face, which most of the time creates attack, even defensively, verbally, I've learned to just go, just wait 1 second. And then I'll do it. You know when I do it the most right now because it's silent is when someone sends me a shitty email, right? And I'm not talking about fans. I'm talking about business something. I'm like this, motherfucker. And then I go, and I read it and I go, yeah, I got to delete that. And I should probably trim this sentence.
How many times have I hit send? I'm like, no. No. And then there's like typos because I'm emotionally typing.
You got to wait and then reread it. Go get it. I'll get up and I'll go get like 3 Oreos and some milk. And then I reread it and then I go, okay, yeah, I gotta sound more. That's what I tell myself. I gotta sound more professional than that first. Because at first it's just you're firing emotion, right? So you're like, oh, really? You think?
Yeah, you're passionate, and it's the restraint of pen and tongue. That's one thing I learned too, man. It's funny you mentioned that because I know you and I have done exactly those same exact impulse, like what knee-jerk reaction. And that's ego, man. That's me. And I've written letters to my band members, and I've written epic, entire, complete breakdowns of these things. And this is what my view is, and never send it. And it's been a good exercise. Like I've written each one, because you're living with a band, you're on top of each other. It's a lot of history, it's marriages,
marriage, yeah, you're married.
And I know that's been said a lot, but
it's true.
It helps to kind of process those things. And what you said exactly, just not sending it, waiting 1 second is such a huge. Think about less war would have happened in this world if people just waited a second.
Without a doubt.
Just
rethink it.
It's a huge thing, man.
It really is, man, and I'm glad you brought up a lot of that too because I love a lot of the themes are the same, and it just goes to show everybody who's watching that. The things that you struggle with, a lot of us struggle with. Nobody's perfect. Everybody has their scars. Everybody has their trauma. Everybody has their past. everybody has their triggers, you know, that you strike a nerve. It's just how responsible you're going to be with it. And some of the basics really are that. A, get it out of your body. Try not to do it by hurting someone else. Don't be so impulsive. All these little tips are really great for people to remember during these times because, man, I got to tell you, you know, as we go through this time with COVID and everything else and all these challenges people are facing, not only are we hearing, you know, about more domestic abuse and, you know, a lot of the things that are going on in the household. But I'll tell you one thing that freaked me out that you're not hearing about, it's going down, is child abuse. And I thought about it for a second, I'm like, oh, interesting, because you think these people would be even more stressed out. But they go, no, you don't get it. It's going down because they're not in school. There's no one to report the bruises and the cuts and the bangs. And I'm like, oh, fuck, that's gnarly, man. So you don't even know what's going on with that shit. You know what I mean? So people need these tools to control themselves and to be able to get through these times when they're feeling frustrated and stressed and they want to bang someone's head off a wall. Take a breath. Don't be so impulsive. Write it out. Reread it. You know, check yourself. And sometimes it just takes a minute for you to like at least approach that a little bit differently and not be so intimidating or reactive, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is all for everyone, and not everyone, because some people's lives are pretty much the same. They get to go to work and they get to do that, but for the most part, it has put us under this it gives us a unique opportunity to see what we're really made of emotionally and how we are. You know, I see some families really bonding during this time. There's been people that are completely alone.
Yeah.
And everyone's experience of this is going to be different.
Yeah.
Me, it's been one of the, I'll look back at this year outside of the obvious negative things, deaths, the first responders, the trauma that they're all enduring. For me, in my little bubble, it's been amazing. I've been home. I've been on tour for my whole life, you know, so I'm reconnected with my family in a way that I've never have.
Yes.
And I've been creative, and I'm writing more music than I have in years, you know, and it's from my experience. And then there's other people that are, you know, and my money situation is amazing. All these other things there's still pressures, but the good that I'm getting out of this is that, you know, I'm connecting in a way. I'm recognizing for me, this is an opportunity to really be here.
Yeah, be a dad, be a husband, be a family member. Because we don't get that. We've lost decades of time trying to be that when you can't. Relationships are almost impossible when all you do is tour. Yeah,
and then these connections with this, and I've connected more musicians on this than I see all these different assemblies of bands and quarantine, you know, cover songs and all these different things happening. People are adapting to it, and I think it's for everyone. It's going to be a different experience. For the kids, it's going to be this thing where they didn't have to go to school for almost a year, you know, and it's going to be a lot different for everybody. So I try to remember that because it's positive for me, it's not going to be the same. The stresses of one man are going to be different from another man or a woman. So it's, you know, those domestic disputes and all those things. You know, you just hope that people can, you know, get through it. And these kids that are stuck in these environments, man, my heart goes out to them, man. So if you're listening and you're in a situation where you know that you're kind of being a little more abusive to your kids, you're doing anything to we're all human. We all make mistakes, you know, like you said, just take a second, man. Try to use this time to repair yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Not, you know, it's never too late to make a better choice, you know?
Totally.
Especially that abuse.
Yep. I totally agree. Well, listen, we're going to cut out, man. But before we go, I just want to remind people, if anybody wants to follow Clint and what's going on in his life right now with his projects and everything, we've been putting up his social media tags, so you can follow him at any one of those. And what is coming up for you, by the way? Anything good on the horizon that you want to give us a sneak peek about?
You know, Sevendust record is done.
Really nice.
Yeah. We don't know when it'll come out, but we're just kind of sitting on it right now. It won't be that long. I got that solo record I put out, and I've got a couple surprises that are going to be coming up the next few weeks that I'm really, you know, just some quarantine creative huddles that have been really cool and manifested into some cool music. And I'm excited to share this unique little presentation I got, man. So yeah, just stay on the sites, and it'll all be there.
Awesome, man. Well, I guess that's it for now. Clint, I just want to say, man, it's always great seeing you. You really are a dear friend of mine. We go back so far, and it's always such a pleasure to catch up. And we really do got to connect and do something, at some point. I just feel like even if it's a few songs to test the waters in a collaboration kind of thing, I just
Yeah.
have a feeling. I've always had a feeling about it. And at some point, I don't care if we even have to do it over the net, but we just got to put something together and see what that sounds like. The
I think we
voices, the
need to, man.
musicality.
Yeah, this is an opportunity. We need to get on it, man.
Yeah, you heard it, everybody. He said yes. He said yes. I gave
Come
him the
here,
ring.
man.
He said yes. All right, man. We're gonna cut out. Listen, dude. It was great seeing you. I said hi to all the boys, and
Yeah.
good luck with everything. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Tell the family we said what's up, and we will catch up again soon, man.
All right, brother. Be well, man.
You too. So that's it, everybody. I just want to thank you guys for hanging around again on yet another episode of Hometown Sessions. Mike Mushock from Stain is going to be coming on with me soon, so stay tuned for that episode. And I just remembered that when I knew I was going to ask Clint about that song Angel Sun I was telling you guys about earlier, and I just heard that the crew put the link in the description. So if you look down below where I am right now real quick, you can either click on that link or just take a quick screenshot of it so you can click on it afterwards and check out the official HD video of the song Angel Sun, which is by far, I think, one of the best songs Clint ever wrote. And that's it. We will see you guys on the next episode of Hometown Sessions. Peace.